Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Welcome to the Post-Geek Singularity community. Once again, for another chat with me, the notorious RMB, here live on a sort of a stormy Saturday afternoon here in sunny Southern California, which is not so sunny today, which is good because we always need the water. First of all, first things first, I want to say that Mr. Cody Tapp, the professor, Cody, you've won the contest to name this xenomorph head. I've had this xenomorph head for 15 years, and it never had a name until now. This xenomorph's name is Pearl. Pearl the xenomorph. People wanted me to call him Sullivan or her Sullivan, but nope. Cody, Elizabeth, and I decided Pearl because of this nice pearlescent cover on his cranium. You win. You're going to get a prize, Cody. I told you, you get a prize. So you will. I don't know what that prize is, but you've already sent me your address, and you will get a prize. So congratulations to Cody. Thank you very much. Now, I've been doing a little viewer feedback, and I've received over the last couple of days. There was a gentleman who wrote me who requested I do not read his email on the air, but he is one of you, the members of the Post Geek Singularity community from across the pond. I'm not even going to say which pond he's across, but it was a very heartfelt letter that explained that he has struggles with depression and other challenges, and that these conversations, not just me being here, but being a part of this community, really makes him feel good. And I think there's no higher honor I could receive than that. I also received, and so thank you very much. I also received a very interesting email that I have yet to get permission to share on the air. I did write this gentleman, but he explained to me that he's Black. He grew up Black and a fan of science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and really felt ostracized growing up because his community that he grew up in wasn't exactly geek friendly. And along with his very interesting and heartfelt email, he sent me links to some pictures of his action figure collection. Now, I think it's SA Figure Arts. I think they're SA Figure Arts figures. I asked him to confirm that for me when I wrote him back. But he's got a great collection, and I want to put up pictures from his collection because he's all great action figure collectors. They take pride. One of the fun things is to take pride in posing your figures, and I watched two, as I want to do. I watched two YouTube videos. Here's Gilbert, everybody. Gilbert's here. How you doing, buddy? You want another cookie? Anyway, he doesn't like it when it's raining outside because I can't go play with him in the backyard. But so I watched two very important videos about Hot Toys yesterday. And one was, of course, at Hot Toys' secret base in Hong Kong. It's their, I guess, flagship store. I don't know if they work out of there or it's like an adjunct to their main offices because I've never been there. It's a dream of mine. One day I would love to do a live Robservations show from the Hot Toys secret base. I watched that video, and then there was another video that it tickled me to no end. There was a same-sex couple, one of the members of that couple. He went on and was showing his amazing Hot Toys collection and the poses that this guy achieved, spot on. I mean, and they've got the Detolf shelves from IKEA, and he was explaining that when he began the relationship with, I guess, he said partner, he didn't say husband, but that his partner wasn't into Hot Toys, like wasn't that into it. And over the course of their relationship, like now he comes home and occasionally he'll show up at home and find out there's a new Hot Toy figure in his case. So you've got these guys are in a relationship, and one has brought his Hot Toys obsession into the relationship, and his partner has accepted this about him, and now they're sharing a love of Hot Toys together. I mean, come on. If there's anything I can say about the Post Geek Singularity community, that is it. Sharing passions, sharing those geeky passions and making them happen. It's been great. And the more feedback I just keep getting. Willow Yang sent me a really interesting email about the difference between Mandarin and Cantonese speakers. and what it's like to live in Vancouver, Canada, and how I think she speaks Mandarin, but everybody there speaks Cantonese. Willow, forgive me, I don't have your email up in front of me right now. But then she goes into like a Chinese restaurant. People just assume she speaks Cantonese when really she doesn't. She only speaks Mandarin. And that just tickled me to no end to hearing about that. I mean, I love hearing stuff from you guys and you explaining things to me and how things, not just that I say, but how the Post Geek Singularity community affects your life. I love it. I just love it. And thank you for that. And I want to continue to share more of the emails and things that you send me. And if it's okay to do so, please put that in the email. And if it's not okay to do so, put that in the email too. I still love hearing from you, whether you want me to share your emails or not. I just don't want to share information on the internet that nobody wants me to share. But again, I just appreciate hearing from all of you and sending me pictures of your collection, man. I love that shit. It's the best. And I thank you a lot. So Cody Tapp, thank you for coming up with the name Pearl. And it's fantastic. Mark C asks immediately, have you seen the Sideshow Jabba? For those of you who don't know, Sideshow Toys is re-releasing. They've already done this. I have their original release of Jabba on his throne. It's like this big. It's 6 scale. I'm going to eventually redo all this. This is basically our laundry room. That's also my office. But I'm going to probably bring that Jabba out because he hasn't been set up since I've moved in here. But Sideshow is redoing it. They've retooled the figure. They've made it better. It looks like they kept the throne the same, but it's a great 6 scale figure. It's really, really cool. I'd love to get the new updated version, but I have the old version, which is good, but I'd have to have a good reason to, because the new one is really expensive compared to, actually, I don't even remember how expensive the old one was. Uh-oh. Someone is clearly making a smoothie in the kitchen, but that's okay. So it's lunchtime. Now, for those of you who are here for the clickbait headline, let me get into it. Wait, that's somebody else's. That's another favorite YouTuber of mine. Let's just jump into it. I don't ever want to be accused of instead of cultural appropriation, there has to be YouTube appropriation. I don't want to YouTube appropriate anyone's online personality, especially not Philip DeFranco, because I really like his videos a lot. And I really appreciate his deep dive videos he's doing on his channel. I mean, I'd love to have a channel like his one day, but I'm a fan of Phil DeFranco, and I love when he says in all of his videos, let's just jump into it. I love that. And I highly recommend going to his channel because it's fascinating. I'm always curious as to what he's going to cover and what he is looking into, what interests him. And he's been on YouTube for a long time. He doesn't need my help to up his subscribers. But anyway, this morning, one of my favorite aggregators of genre material is Dark Horizons. It's one of the oldest sites on the web for geeks. Garth Franklin, who's based in Australia, who's a great guy. I've met him a couple of times. Really like what Garth Franklin has done. His lead story today on Dark Horizons, first Picard series character breakdowns? ? Now, he goes on to quote, now some more details have emerged via that hashtag show, which seemed to confirm talk that Picard is the only character from the old series that will return for this. Now, first of all, what I'm about to say, I do not have any professional confirmation of any of this. None. And I'm going to read this because I'm not going to actually talk about whether or not I like these character descriptions, because it would be ridiculous for me to make any kind of judgment as to whether I like these character descriptions or not, because I'd rather wait to see the actors and how they're portrayed and what they look like and what they feel like when you watch the show. So I'm not going to talk about whether or not I think these are good characters or not. What I am going to talk about is a trend. I see that there's a trend developing in these character descriptions that is carrying over from what we've seen already in Star Trek Discovery, that I find I don't understand it. But so I'm going to read the 7 character descriptions as reported by that hashtag show for what they say. Okay, here it goes. Connie. She's early 30s, African American, a mercenary pilot and widow with a bounty on her head. Lawrence, early 30s man, a thief with a dodgy moral compass and Picard's pilot for a mission. Starton, early 30s man, a positronic brain specialist terrified of space travel. Dr. Smith, holographic crewman, get it? Programmed to avoid becoming too self-aware. Kabar, late teenage male, Romulan martial artist, extremely devoted to Picard. Indira, early 20s woman, smart, agile, but socially inept and immature. Alana, 40 to 50s woman, former intelligence officer, analytical, paranoid, substance abuser. This is what this site is reporting, which leads me to believe that these characters, that Picard is on some kind of clandestine, dare I say, pirate mission. He's got his female Han Solo. He's got a thief. He's got a holographic crewman. He's got a Romulan martial artist extremely devoted to him. And clearly, as we all know, as has been reported, this show takes place post Star Trek 09, and it takes place after the canonical comic book series that Alex Kurtzman was involved in writing, Countdown. That was the prequel comic for Star Trek 09. So all of this is basically an outgrowth of what happened in Star Trek 09, which makes perfect sense to me, considering that Alex Kurtzman, the impresario of the new Star Trek empire, ruled over by Section 31 and Emperor Georgiou, they're moving along those lines. Now, there's a long history of space piracy and things like that in Star Trek. Heck, in Star Trek 3, the wrath of the search for Spock, Kirk and company stole the Enterprise. You know, McCoy tried to book passage on a ship to the Genesis system from, somebody that didn't look so reputable. There was a merchant marine ship that had Volcrus on it in Star Trek 3 that was delivering the Genesis plans to Kruge. So it's not like we haven't had mercenary work. And also in episodes like Unification Part 1 and 2, Gambit from the 7th season of Gambit, where Picard goes undercover with basically a crew that's comprised of characters like this. I mean, I like that two-parter a lot. A lot of people don't. I really liked it. So these characters I don't object to the idea that clearly we're seeing, Picard is a very different Picard. Romulus has been destroyed. He's probably haunted by all those dead people. Millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and were silenced. I get it. I understand. But this might as well read like a streaming Star Wars show on Disney Plus. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with this per se. But as I've always said, one of the things that always struck me, one of the most important things about Star Trek to me when I was a kid, was the fact that Star Trek was about people, the crew of the Enterprise were the best of the best. These were people that had beaten the odds, that had overcome any personal problems they might have had, and they were excellent. Everybody across the board, everybody on the Enterprise deserved to be there. And certainly sometimes we would showcase their shortcomings or foibles or problems. And of course, Spock, we had various episodes where people were affected by spores or the Plutonians, or there was somebody around affecting the minds of our crew members and their vulnerabilities bubbled to the surface. Whether you had a mind sifter or dagger of the mind or something like that, or Spock was suffering from the blood fever, or any of these things, we've always seen people emotionally compromised. This side of paradise, when Spock gets hit by the spores on Omicron Ceti 3, obviously he falls in love. He allows himself to fall in love with Leela Kalomi because he no longer has the emotional constraints that have been put on him by the society that he came from. However, since the advent, and there's people like Reginald Barclay, who obviously were geniuses, but they also had certain problems and they were socially inept and they had emotional difficulties, which is why One of the great staples of Star Trek in the 80s was, of course, they added a counselor to the crew, a ship's counselor, which makes sense. On long-term deep space voyages, when you have families on board these ships, why wouldn't you have, there's a whole set of problems that did not exist little less than 100 years previous in Starfleet to the time of Kirk, or even 100 years before. Families were not on board starships. They weren't on those kinds of missions. And obviously, as the galaxy became bigger and the distances traveled were longer, and certain threats were mitigated, bringing families onto starships was a good move. And I thought pretty innovative for the time. So I really like that. Unfortunately, my problem with this is it feels like every other, it could be The Expanse, and once again, I see, and this is just this is my first, I decided to discuss this topic literally 30 minutes before I went live. I wasn't even going to come live because I was like, I don't have anything to talk about today, other than the fact that Cody came up with the name Pearl, which is simple, clean, ergonomic, and doesn't she or he look like a pearl? I kind of thought so. That's basically all I wanted to talk about, and the emails that people have been sending me. But when I went to Dark Horizons, I go to Dark Horizons every day. I look at Garth's site every day, even on the weekends, because Australia is a day ahead of us. So you never know what he's going to uncover. And this was, of course, his first story. And how can I not talk about it? Because if I'm not going to talk about it, somebody else will, or somebody else will go, hey, why aren't you talking about the new Picard show? So this is cool to talk about. Now, one of my favorite Star Trek novels, one of the very first pocket Star Trek novels released in the early 80s, was a novel called Black Fire by Sonny Cooper. And in it, Spock goes full-on space pirate to find out basically who bombed a Federation starship. And this is the early 80s. This is not post 9/11. This is way in the early 80s. It's a really cool book. I would call it definitely the same way I like the episodes Gambit Part 1 and Part 2 from TNG's 7th season. I liked Black Fire. I'll admit it. I have no problem with piracy, and I have no problem with the Picard show. I'm hoping it's great, but this character list just seems ordinary to me. And it doesn't seem very Star Trek-ish. But again, my caveat here is I haven't seen this show. It hasn't been made yet. It hasn't even been cast yet. It's still in development, but they're supposed to start shooting relatively soon. So, they're moving ahead. They've been writing the show for a long time. Patrick Stewart has been in the writing room and judging. Here's my fear. And when I worked on the Next Generation Blues, I sat down with Patrick Stewart for hours and had conversation with him about the character of Picard. And he ended our talks, and it's in the documentary. He says, we could do another Star Trek show, but maybe it's unnecessary. That's how he left it with me back in 2014. Actually, that interview was from 2013, but that's how he left it with me. So that was 6 years ago. And I can understand, after seeing Logan, and after seeing where Patrick Stewart took Professor X in Logan, what a fantastic idea to bring Picard back later in his life and see what's up. But this character description seems to me, once again, it's an amalgamation of tropes that we've seen in other places. Mercenary pilot and widow with a bounty on her head. Perhaps the bounty was put there by the Hutts. I would love to see different kinds of characters. What I would love to have seen? Like, what if Picard was what if one of the main characters was, I don't know, some non-corporeal, what if an Organian was part of a new show? Like, now we have the way to do, we can do non-corporeal entities, whether they're flashing lights or anything. And why couldn't an Organian be part of the crew? Go into Star Trek lore, like Diane Duane. I often talk about Ensign Narat, the Horta ensign that was on the Enterprise in her Star Trek novels. I just think that there's so much rich history and canonical information that's available to just go through the Star Trek encyclopedia, come up with more. But again, I'm now turning into one of these old men, get off my lawn Star Trek fans. But there's so much in Star Trek lore and history that now we're getting. I mean, hey, now that we have dysfunctional learning disability Spock, you know, it's no longer enough that he was a man trapped between two worlds that didn't belong to either one of them. You know, that's not enough anymore. Now, in order to appeal to, we have to give him a learning disability as a child. See, the thing about it is that the character of Spock, his disability was never a disability, even though it was imposed on him by his own people. And he had to overcome that. He had to be uber Vulcan. He had to be super Vulcan in order to compensate for what was going on. And that was what gnawed at him every day of his life. And one of the great things about his character development over the course of the films, especially in the director's cut of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Star Trek: The Motion Picture is basically about Spock confronting the very thing that he wants to be, which is pure logic, unfettered by the constraints of his human emotions. And it's not just his human emotions. Vulcans have emotions, they just control them. But it's much more difficult for Spock having a human side to him. That emotional control is twice as difficult, which is part of what his character was all about. And in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the reason this consciousness was calling to him from space, why was V'ger calling to him from space? Because V'ger was total logic. And it was what Spock at the beginning of Star Trek: The Motion Picture wants to be. He's undergoing the Kolinar discipline, and he's trying to purge that human half that's held him back, at least in his mind. In our minds, it's made him the great character that he is. But the whole plot of Star Trek: The Motion Picture is it opens with Spock. Remember, we see Spock on Vulcan with this consciousness calling to him from space. Ironically, pure logic is stirring his emotional yearning to become that thing that he's trying to become. And then what happens in the course of Star Trek: The Motion Picture? In confronting total logic, he comes to understand that, what does he tell Kirk, holding Kirk's hand in sickbay? That this simple feeling, the idea that I can call you a brother, this simple feeling is beyond V'ger's comprehension, which means that V'ger, although being a being of pure logic, does not know enough to evolve, to become what V'ger wants to become. And that was Spock's, by the time you get to Star Trek II, and you have that great scene where James Kirk is, Admiral Kirk is talking to Spock about taking over the Enterprise, and Spock wisely says that his first best destiny is to be a starship captain. And Spock says, I have no ego to bruise. And Kirk says, I would not presume to debate you. Spock says, that is wise. He's a man now at he's comfortable with himself, because his entire character arc was dealing with being a man of two worlds, but not a man of any world. And the world he really found was amongst his friends and family on the Enterprise. And now we have been saddled with the retcon that, oh no, he was a crazy dyslexic kid. It's not enough that he was a Vulcan half-breed. Now we have to saddle him with a learning disability. I don't understand that. I mean, I don't think Leonard Nimoy would have liked that either. Honestly, I don't. And I think that this character list for the Picard series is reflecting a trend. We have a holographic crewman that's programmed to become too self-aware. Why not have a holographic crewman that is absolutely self-aware? I mean, we saw a holographic civilization in Deep Space Nine. And if they're self-aware, they themselves think of themselves as real. Now, what would be great for us as viewers is if you have a self-aware holographic crewman. Does that mean a holographic crewman has a soul? To me, that's a logical extension of what we've seen in Blade Runner and what we've seen in Battlestar Galactica, what we certainly saw with Kalon over the last two episodes of The Orville. And I look at these things, and it's like late teenage male Romulan martial artist extremely devoted to Picard. You know who they're going to cast for that role? Somebody who's Asian and can do martial arts. Because, then we've got Indira, an early 20s woman, smart, agile, but socially inept and immature. Okay. Why is it early 20s women or mid 20s women now on modern Star Trek are socially inept and immature? Why do they have to be that way? Aren't we seeing that in Tilly? Why is Tilly why is she a fan favorite character? Because everyone recognizes themselves in Tilly. But you know what? I don't aspire to be a character like Tilly. Other people might, but I don't. I want to see badasses that are at the top of their game. I know they're going for something different. But Alana, a 40 to 50s woman who's a former intelligence officer who's analytical and a paranoid substance abuser. Why not hire Harvey Keitel, from Bad Lieutenant? I would love to see a more science fiction take. What's a science fiction idea for someone who's paranoid and a substance abuser? I mean, in the Orville this season, we saw somebody, one of our favorite crewmen, become addicted to online pornography. I would like to know what the 23rd century equivalent of that kind of an addiction is. I don't know. Who knows? But I just see that we're getting a show. If this is indeed true, we're not seeing Star Trek leap into real, thoughtful science fiction territory. But again, I'm just reading a character description that, by the way, comes from the hashtag show, which might be bunk anyway. And everything I'm saying to you is bogus. But again, I want Star Trek to excite me. I want to deal I talk a lot about the book Sapiens and Homo Deus, these two books I've been reading right now. They're so chock-a-block full of interesting ideas. That's what I want for my Star Trek. I want to be challenged by Star Trek. I want my mind to be expanded. I want to walk away from episodes not being angry about things that I shouldn't be angry about. Maybe it's because I'm an old man and I shouldn't be talking about these things anymore. But anyway, so that's just Mark C says Captain Pegleg Picard. Yes. Make it make it so, mateys. I mean, yeah. I know. I know. It just kind of it bums me out. So but I'm not going to get bummed out. As everyone knows, hope springs eternal. I get deliriously excited. I'm very excited that there is a Picard show in the offing. I hope it's great. I really, really, really want it to be great. Please be great. I want to love this show. I want to love this show with all of my heart. I really, really, really do. But the problem is there's just so much that's already been out there in Star Trek history, that could be mined, that Star Trek fans would like, and it would be really, really interesting to see explored further. I mean, I would love to see like an Organian, like I said, or a Metron, or become a crew member. It's interesting because in the Orville, we kind of got that sort of in Isaac, but it wasn't far enough along. I mean, I don't want Q to be like a main character on this show because Q is omnipotent. You can have a powerful creature, but you've got to limit that person's power because otherwise they become a Deus Ex Machina all the time, and you don't Deus Ex Machina. Sorry, Deus, not two, Deus. Sorry, I don't speak French. But anyway, so I guess that's just kind of what I wanted to talk about right away. I wanted, just get it off my chest before I had to listen to this over and over again from everybody. Did you read that report? Well, now I'm here to talk about it with you lovely people. So let's see what people have. There's a lot of people here today. I appreciate you guys being here. For those who might be new here, remember, this is the Post Geek Singularity community. Everyone is welcome. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about it in an interesting way. And already here, someone saying, here we go. Let's trash a good episode of Trek. I'm not trashing an episode of Trek, but that's okay. Okay, I'm stepping on this. TMP was the absolute worst. See, it wasn't. Star Trek: The Motion Picture was not the absolute worst, but that's okay, David. You can think that, but I would suggest you look at that film in a different way. Josh Crichton is here. He says, Rob, check out the Treehouse Time Machine on the Dust channel on YouTube. It's like the Goonies meets Back to the Future, and it's directed by Alan Richson. For those of you who don't know, there's a YouTube channel called Dust that has become a favorite destination spot of mine. Dust is putting on short science fiction films from all over the place, from all kinds of different filmmakers. They're really interesting. There's a lot of, they vary in quality, but they're really cool. I really like that there's a channel now that's devoted to putting up new filmmaking voices of all kinds, and it's great. I am going to look at that. Treehouse Time Machine. I like it already. Goonies meets Back to the Future. Sounds good. Let's check it out. Movie Fanobi's here. Happy Saturday, Rob and friends. Get your nerd on. That's what we're here to do. Getting the nerd on. Mark C says, what did you think of the theory that Trelane was a member of the Q Continuum? Well, as many people might know, I read lots of Star Trek novels. Peter David wrote a great novel called Q Squared that is all about that very subject, about Trelane being a child from the Q Continuum and multiple timelines and all kinds of things. Q Squared is great. The Tipton brothers have an IDW comics series running right now that takes all the omnipotent beings like Q, like Trelane, like the Organians, like, I guess, the Metrons, and they basically are having a huge competition taking various Star Trek crews and pitting them against one another to win all the Quatloos. And it's really interesting. It's really fun. And I really like the first issue of the comic. We had the Tiptons on the Inglorious Treksperts podcast. So check that out. We talk about Star Trek comics. It's a lot of fun. I think it was last week's episode. So I hope you guys check that out. And let's see. Celadon Sound says, would be cool to see you engage in discourse with them about this. There isn't enough dialogue on YouTube, just one-sided views in an echo chamber. Oh, wait, pardon me. Celadon sent 2 questions here. You've streamed with Midnight's Edge and Mecha Random. They've pushed the no white men allowed at Captain Marvel narrative. Would be cool to see you engage in discourse with them about this. There isn't enough dialogue on YouTube, just one-sided views in an echo chamber. I talked about this before, and the whole there has been a thought that, and it was not forwarded by Brie Larson. It was not put forward by Brie Larson. Other people have talked about that film criticism is predominantly dominated by men, older critics, aging OG geeks like myself, which, by the way, is true. And what's interesting is I have been a complete and total staunch supporter of new voices coming in and adding to the conversation, joining the conversation. I am completely adamantly opposed by trading one oppression for another. We all need to move forward together. We do not need to trade one group's oppression for another group's oppression, which I think is wrong. And I think, look, I've been a geek my entire life. I'm here talking to you. My geek credibility is well established. I would certainly be a little bit bummed out if somebody came to my house and said, you know what, Rob, your voice is no longer needed or wanted or allowed, and pulled my internet connection and said, we're going to give other people a chance to talk, and we're going to silence you. That does not fly with me. I was raised in I was adopted. You can go watch the story in an earlier Robservations of how I met my biological sister and biological mom. But I was raised in a Jewish household, and I grew up listening to stories of people that survived concentration camps whose parents and families they were part of German society for hundreds of years. And one day, first of all, their businesses were taxed out of existence before Kristallnacht. And one day, people just showed up, took their homes, literally homes that belonged in their family for hundreds of years, and said, you people don't get to live here anymore. We're getting you out of our society. I mean, this happened in the 20th century, and everything they had was taken. So I don't think one group that believes that they've been marginalized or didn't have a voice should get their voice at the expense of other voices. That's never going to work. It's never going to work. It's never worked in history. It will never work in history. What we must do is the online geek community, the post-geek singularity community, all the people here, you people are part of a community which should flourish, and we should absolutely, more than anything else, cultivate discourse between one another, because we all come from the baseline of loving the same stuff. Look, I might not love Star Trek Discovery, but I love Star Trek, and I, like I've said on the show many, many times, if you love Star Trek Discovery, that's great. Love it with all your heart. And, Star Trek Discovery might get you to go back and delve into the rich half century or more history of Star Trek and find things you really like about it. Star Trek is now a continuum. It's a continuum of various ideas that reflect the time in which it's made. However, I do believe that there are, just like good writing is good writing. It's always been good writing. Great writing endures through the time. And what's interesting about the original Star Trek is people can go back and say, yes, it's a little sexist or a lot sexist. But at the time, it was one of the most progressive shows on television. They were pushing the envelope of what they could get away with. But, the real question is inclusion, what is the best kind of inclusion? The kind of inclusion that hits you over the head, or the kind of inclusion that's just matter of fact and it's presented as this is what day-to-day life is? You can do an issue-oriented show, but even issue-oriented shows like Let That Be Your Last Fat Battlefield don't work when you're hitting an issue on the head so directly. So I am not somebody who's pushing a no white men allowed agenda. I don't believe that's true. What I do believe is there's been a lot of people who haven't been given a voice or haven't been allowed a voice that are now getting a voice. There is more inclusion than there has ever been before in American society. There's more rancor, of course, but does that mean that we don't have a long way to go? Of course we have a long way to go. Any Black American can tell you they certainly have not achieved equality in this country ever, despite what's on paper. To this right now in 2019, ask any Black American, they don't have equality. They don't even have to. When I get stopped by the police, if I get pulled over because I have a broken taillight, I'm not worried about whether or not I might get shot. Imagine if you have to drive around. Things I take for granted. I can walk in any store anywhere. No one pays me any mind. That's not true of a Black American. And until we all have equality, and it's going to take us forever, because I believe that we are genetically, racism, we are all racist, and I think it's been genetically bred into us. I actually do think part of it is genetics. And until we realize that we are all racists, and that, like with Spock learning logic, we need to move forward as a society, as an entire society, to understand that's part of who we are. Because if we don't admit these things, we can't move forward and get past them. Because that's what culture and that's what knowledge is all about. It's all about being able to understand and recognize our base instincts and move beyond them. That's what intelligence is for. That's what art is for. That's what literature is for. That's what all, assuming we don't blow ourselves up. Anyway, just going off on a rant. Mark C says early 20s intelligent, but socially inept. Maybe they pulled the actress from Twitter. Yes, could be. Let's see. Fergal Kelly is here. Watch John Carter again this evening, and you are right. It deserves better love. Damn it, it does. I've talked a lot about John Carter and my love for it, and Andrew Stanton, how Star Wars, Bob Iger killed John Carter on purpose because he had the possibility of getting the Star Wars franchise. But John Carter is a much better movie than it's given credit for. It should have been called Princess of Mars, the same title that the book it's derived from was called. I mean, how could Disney not make a movie called Princess of Mars? I mean, I understand, but Mark C says, Mark C, you're always here, man. I appreciate your support. The film critic comment started the ball rolling. The InStyle magazine video interview took away many people's doubt and dropped the hammer on Larson. But here's what I don't understand. Why can't Brie Larson have this comment, this opinion? She's entitled to her opinion. I mean, she all she was saying was that, look, the critical space has been dominated by white men for a long time. Why can't I use my power in this particular moment in time when Captain Marvel is opening to get more people, more voices of color, or more voices of more marginalized voices to come in and join the conversation. Like this conversation we're having right now. Everybody's welcome. I don't delineate. I want people of all shapes, sizes, colors, creeds, sexualities, belief systems, whatever, to be here and trade ideas. That's all she was asking for. I mean, look, one of my favorite, actually two of my favorite movies of all time, two of my favorite movies, The Sweet Smell of Success and All About Eve, are both about theater critics. Well, they're Burt Lancaster and George Saunders are both playing. Addison DeWitt in All About Eve, who's a theater critic, is exactly who Brie Larson's talking about. They've never made a Sweet Smell of Success or an All About Eve where a female theater critic wielded that much power. They never did. You know why? Because there weren't any. There were no female. There was you had female gossip writers like Hedda Hopper who wielded power, but no. So I just don't understand. Everyone gets mad about you're all quick to what Brie Larson. Just listen to what she's saying. I mean, it's not so bad, but I understand where it came from. But it's come on, man, aren't we all better than that? And let's get more people's voices. We never went wrong hearing more opinions from people. Look, there are people that have bad opinions. There are people that do horrible, awful things, such as the Nazis and the Khmer Rouge. And we've seen that was terrible. But have you ever watched any behind the scenes of the British Parliament? Man, those people get in each other's faces. They yell and they scream and they shout. It's amazing. There's nothing wrong with that. Willow Yang's, hello, Willow. You become quickly one of my favorite people. So, Rob, can the Enterprise take on an Imperial Star Destroyer? What does everyone here think? Well, as many of you might know, I have been doing at the end of the San Diego Comic-Con. If you ever come to San Diego, which, by the way, if you do, I recommend coming to the Starship Smackdown panel. We have been doing it for, I think, this is going to be our 17th year. We've been doing Starship Smackdown, and that's all it is. It's a panel at the San Diego Comic-Con where we discuss which starships could beat up which starships. And to be honest, I think the physics and the power of the Enterprise, of the Star Trek universe, is so far beyond Star Wars. First of all, snub fighters, the energy weapons in the Star Wars universe could never penetrate the shields of the Starship Enterprise. The Enterprise could just basically roll up on a Star Destroyer and just cut it in half with its main phasers. Gone like this. But that's just an opinion. You all should come to Starship Smackdown and check it out. So let's see. Dale M says, not the biggest Trek fan, but I never miss a show. Do you don't miss this show, or you don't miss a Star Trek show? Because I love Star Trek shows. I'll watch them anyway. I go into every episode of Discovery wanting to love it. I really do. So let's go back up and start. Aaron Johnson asks, the problem with this Picard show, it doesn't address the TNG timeline. I would love to see if this show was a continuation of TNG, but to do it right, don't fall to the Kurtzman traps like Discovery. I hope not. I mean, look, if this is indeed, and it is a sequel, look, Alex Kurtzman, I've said this, when you write something in Hollywood, part of your deal specifies that you're involved somehow with any television spinoff. And the Picard show is a direct spinoff of Star Trek 09. Now, even I have to accept that what happened before the Narada incursion is canonical Star Trek. And I don't have a problem with that. I even like the Kelvin. And I like Captain Rabau. And I even like George Kirk. All of that is canonical. But is the destruction of Romulus? I mean, who knows? We don't know. I don't know, because that's very interesting. There's an interesting point to be made, because here's the thing. When you really think about it, I've always thought the Narada incursion is from here's where you can start splitting hairs about what Midnight's Edge talks about when it comes to canon. The only way that the Narada incursion could have occurred is if the future that Kurtzman and Orsi set up, I mean, it's almost a continuum in the JJ 09 movie. Their premise that a Romulan came back into the past means that their movie, their idea for Star Trek actually began in the TNG era. Remember, because that the Narada comes back in time, which means even though we're seeing, here, this is semantics. Go with me on this. The Narada, where a lot of fans talk about canonical Star Trek, the Narada is usually talked about as being the divergent point where the universe is split apart. But I would say that the first time we ever see the Narada is coming through a rip in time. Now, we just assume that the Narada is coming from a future that is canonical Star Trek. But we don't see the Narada come back from a canonical Star Trek point of view. There's the comic book, certainly, Countdown. But from a legal standpoint, from a legal Star Trek standpoint, we're watching a movie that already takes place. Even though the Narada comes back in time, we have not seen it. We have not seen the future where the Narada comes from. We've not. It comes back in time, which means the Narada might be coming from the Kelvinverse future, not the future. We just assume that it's canonical. But who says that it is? There's no. This is the future that Star Trek has been portrayed in Star Trek 09. I would dare say, and what Midnight's Edge was getting to, and this is only splitting hairs. We've never seen the future that the Narada came from. We saw a comic book, but we've never seen the future on screen. So the argument that this Picard show is absolutely going to take place in the future, that's part of what Kurtzman and Orsi created, that's part of what J.J. Abrams created. I believe a lot of not, I wouldn't call them accusations, but the assertions that have been made by Midnight's Edge, legally, you could say that the Narada incursion is not canonical Star Trek. The Narada came from a different future that's only part of Star Trek 09. If that makes any sense. Just because we didn't see the future, we see a ship come back from in time. We don't see it come back from time in canonical Trek, in the Trek that was created before the deal was made with Bad Robot in 2007. The Narada is absolutely created by Bad Robot Star Trek. And the people that wrote about the Narada had carved out a thing that said, if we're going to do a Star Trek show, it's got to be based on what we've already created. And the Countdown show is part of that. But that's not from the Countdown comic is not canonical Star Trek future. It's their Star Trek future. It's it was after that paywall or whatever deal was made with Bad Robot, all the Star Trek, none of it has taken place in the prime canonical Star Trek timeline. They have created a new prime timeline. I know it's weird. It's semantics, but that's kind of what I've been thinking about a lot. And I would love to get in on that. Brandon is here. Brandon says, Robs, hey Robs, what's up? Have you kept up with the Batman Damned series? Also, any suggestions on any autobiographies to read? Always enjoy reading real life events. I have not kept up with the Batman Damned series, but I will freely admit that I no longer buy individual issues. I mean, there's something I have to read, like, I have to read Doomsday Clock. I'll read the individual issues, but I like to get the omnibuses. I like to get the hardcovers. I mean, it's like this. I'll just give you an example. Sitting right next to me, I just reread, because I was reading Doomsday Clock, the Flash Batman story, The Button, with the comedian's Button from Watchmen. If you don't know anything about that story, it's basically where Doomsday Clock begins. But I like to wait to get the books because I like to collect the books. So I have not caught up with that story, but Batman Damned sounds good to me. I'm sure they'll collect it, and when they collect it in a hardcover, I will buy it. Hassan Chavez says, can you talk about horror someday? Bloodservations. Well, Hassan, Dave Parker, the director of The Hills Run Red, we did an early chat, not very technically proficient, but Dave was sitting with me at this desk. Dave, of course, directed The Hills Run Red. He directed the Sweet Tooth segment of Tales of Halloween. He directed The Dead Hate the Living. A very talented director and writer and editor in his own right. One of my dearest, oldest friends. We did an episode of Robservations. It's actually, I think, the first live chat I did. I think I called it Robservations 1. It was almost 60 chats ago. It was so long, I can't remember. So, yeah, I would love to talk. You know what? I will talk horror. You know what I'm going to do? That's a good idea. Tomorrow, because it's Sunday, it's the Sabbath, I'm going to talk about my favorite horror movies, as one does. Maybe I'll talk about my favorite blasphemous horror movies. Of course, I don't want to offend anyone. But that's a good idea. I'm going to talk horror. I think I'm going to talk horror. As I keep showing, because I haven't even opened it yet, but one of my favorite John Carpenter horror movies, Prince of Darkness. I'm waiting to bust open this 4K. So, yeah. Which is good stuff. Horror is a good idea. I like that. Matthew Gaudette says, I liked Mission Impossible when Leonard Nimoy was on it. Absolutely, absolutely. Bozo the Clown says TMP was similar to the Changeling, Immunity Syndrome, Doomsday Machine, and even Corbomite. Pity Generations didn't do the same with yesterday's Enterprise. Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of these giant cosmic entity stories in Star Trek, but the reason that I think that TMP was similar to the Changeling and Immunity Syndrome, to me, yeah, the idea that basically we're throwing these probes out into space and we don't know what they're going to encounter. But I think the difference is, while Nomad was looking to talk to its creator or transmit its data or any of these things, I do think Star Trek the Motion Picture at its core, as I described, was really about Spock. And it was about his journey. And Star Trek the Motion Picture is, the V'ger scenario is really Spock's story. Then you have Kirk's story grappling with Decker and trying to get his space legs back. And then you have Dr. McCoy who's observing both of his old friends. He doesn't want to be there. And so you've got this triumvirate of men that belong together. And Star Trek the Motion Picture is really about putting back together the broken heart of Star Trek. And that's why I love that movie so much. And it has an epic scope and an epic feel, and it requires, I mean, look, if you think Star Trek the Motion Picture is boring, you're not going to be able to get through any Andrei Tarkovsky movies. And when I was a kid, I loved Andrei Tarkovsky movies. And they require, they are deliberately paced. Mark C., you're here all the time, man. You've sent me the InStyle interview. Check your Twitter DM. Look for the Thing avatar. The comment here has nothing to do with film critics. Each are relatively harmless. Together, it looks bad. Yeah, I guess it can look bad, but I don't get angry. I mean, I think that Brie Larson. Look, Brie Larson. How many times do you get to be you go from being in a room like a room. You go for literally being in a movie about being stuck in a room for years to being in a movie about a woman stuck in a Cree body or a human body. I mean, she's using. I think Brie Larson is using her powers for good, to be honest. I really do. Josh Crichton says, Rob, are you excited for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge? You can buy robes of the Sith and the Jedi. Which one are you? Are you excited to drink blue milk and drink the alcoholic beverage such as Jedi mind control and the Outer Rim? Okay, what Josh is saying is, as any good Star Wars fan knows, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is opening at both Disneyland and at Disney World this year. And Nerdist had a video where they sent a correspondent out. They first allowed people in. It looks incredible. We're big Disneyland fans here in the house, and it just looks incredible. I got to make sure my annual pass is renewed because I want to go live there. It looks incredible. Full scale Millennium Falcon rides, Rise of the Resistance ride. I mean, it looks incredible. Go watch that Nerdist video. It's amazing. Check it out. Yeah. I can't wait for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I cannot wait. Matthew Gaudette. They decided the time travel that was possible in TOS and Star Trek 4 was suddenly no longer canon and changed the rules of time travel in Star Trek. Yeah, I mean, Star Trek has always had time travel. Look, the mechanics of time travel are always one of the most. There's nothing that geeks. If you get geeks together in a bar and you all start drinking heavily, There's nothing better than a good time travel discussion. There really isn't. And if you guys love time travel, there's a couple of movies I want to recommend to you that are they're low budget. They're low budget. Actually, there's three, and one is self-serving. You got to watch Primer. That'll turn your head upside down. You've got to watch Time Crimes, the Spanish film Time Crimes. Watch Time Crimes and watch my movie that I edited, Paradox. I understand it's low budget. It was shot in like 3 rooms, but it's on Netflix. You can watch it. I edited the film. Michael Hurst wrote and directed it. It's kind of an homage to low budget James Cameron and John Carpenter. But watch those 3 movies. I think they deal with time travel in a really interesting way. You're going to like them all. Primer is a head scratcher. It's a little mind bending, but Primer is really, and they made it for $30,000. So check that out. Mark C says the director's cut of Star Trek: The Motion Picture is a superior cut. We need a 40th anniversary Blu-ray. God damn, do I feel you there. Did you notice that the score to Orville's 2-parter sounds very Star Trek: The Motion Picture? Oh yes, when they were flying down to the home planet, that was the Kaelon home planet, the Kaelon homeworld. How it was completely an homage to Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Complete homage. Keldon Sound says, can't tell if you've missed my super chats or reading out of order. Oh, yeah, I was probably reading out of order. I'm sorry. You had them stacked on top, but I went back and caught it. Oh, I didn't see this one. Keldon says, loved your audio post video, by the way. Any more to come? Yes. For those of you who might not have caught my past video, I did a video when we were at the final mix, and I apologize for the technical inefficiencies. I thought that up at the last minute. I should have taken more care, technically speaking, to make it more palatable. But for those who didn't watch it, we finished. I was the editor, much like I was on Prelude to Axanar, on a new original crowd-funded short film called Skyfighter that was written and directed and produced by Lucas Kendall from Film Score Monthly fame. It was his first directorial effort. It's a 16-minute short film that Tobias Richter, also of Axanar fame, did all the visual effects for. And we actually finished the movie the other day. And on the mixing stage, on the final mixing stage, I made a video about finishing the film. And you guys can go watch that. And Keldon Sound's question is, will there be any more to come? Yes, we have to decide if we're going to release. Lucas is deciding what he's going to do with Skyfighter. It was made specifically for the investors who are interested. There's a feature version of Skyfighter, and this was sort of a proof of concept for the feature version, which we are looking to make. And the financiers, by the way, love the short film. Always a good sign. So I'm going to have Lucas on this show, and we'll probably publicly debut the short film during a live stream. So what I hope to do is I'm hooking up my Wirecast system, and I'm going to have a live chat with Lucas. We're going to show the film live to all of you guys, and we'll be able to talk about the making of it. We'll show you some behind the scenes. Then we'll show the film live on this show, and then afterwards you'll come back when the show's over, and you can ask us live questions about the making of Skyfighter. How cool will that be? So hopefully, again, we have to find out if Skyfighter is going to play at film festivals. And if I include it in the live stream, maybe Lucas will, since it won't be up, it depends what he wants to do with it. But I'd love to debut the film for the public here, and we do it live we do it live on this channel. Kelleron also asks, I've seen YouTube videos with titles like "If Only Brie Larson Kept Her Mouth Shut." Yeah, see, this is my problem. You know, our society relies, it's incumbent on the fact that we believe in civility, that we believe that other people's opinions have weight. And you can be polite. And why are you mad? Why is anybody, you don't know Brie Larson, and it's ridiculous that our community, the community I grew up in, I spent my entire life in, the community that opened my mind, that made me read the great canon of sci-fi literature, that has made me love reading stories of history and science. I mean, I was a kid and I had to read the World Book Encyclopedia cover to cover. I know we didn't have the Encyclopedia Britannica. We were a World Book family. I know that's like Pepsi if you love Coke, but hey, that's just the way I grew up. But it amazes me that people are so close-minded in a time when we're getting so many amazing things. It drives me absolutely to distraction. It makes me very, very, very angry and embarrassed. Brandon says, dude, the button is so good. That's that graphic novel I just picked up. It was really interesting how they started to incorporate Watchmen into the DC universe, although I find it also offensive as an Alan Moore fan. But I get it. I really do understand. So yeah. A Bunyan Snipe says, have I seen the Hanzo? He asks, have I seen the Hanzo, the Razr movies? No, but I'm aware of them. I have not seen them. You know, it's funny. I just read something. Have you guys ever seen Alex Cox's movie Repo Man? Emilio Estevez is in it. Harry Dean Stanton's in it. Alex Cox directed. I think it came out in 1984. Criterion put a great Blu-ray out on it. It's an incredible movie. It's a punk science fiction film. And Laurie Walters, the great actor Laurie Walters, there's a great scene when he's talking about his own personal philosophy. And he's like, you know, like when someone mentions shrimp or a plate of shrimp, sometimes you just start hearing about plates of shrimp. It all just happens. I don't remember the actual line, but so for you, Bunyan, to ask about Hanzo the Razr, I literally was looking at a thing about Hanzo the Razr just the other day. So it's kind of crazy that you asked me about that. Josh Crichton asks, I think the footage I saw of Skyfighter on your stream, it feels like Warner Brothers material. Can't wait to see it. Well, Josh, thank you. I mean, we worked really hard on it. Even though it's a short film, we shot it with anamorphic lenses, widescreen lenses, anamorphic glass, which gives you the widescreen look, and you get those. What's cool about anamorphic glass is because of the distortion of the lens, the glass itself, you get those really cool flares. Like I call them Jan de Bont flares, but they're in any. If you watch Die Hard, Jan de Bont shot Die Hard. You get all these cool anamorphic flares because they were shooting with anamorphic lenses. They don't shoot a lot of movies with anamorphic lenses anymore, unfortunately. They'd rather shoot spherically. It gives you more choices in the post process, but they are great. Mark C says James Colley's trailer to Buck Rogers looked amazing. What happened to it? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what happened to that. Dieter Bastian is here. Dieter, thank you for being here. You know, I do buy Blu-rays off. You know what? Okay, Dieter, I don't know if you collect physical media, but in Germany, they released an insane Blu-ray set of all the Psycho movies. Incredible. By the way, I'm just getting a message from Alex Bornstein, the composer that did all the work for Axanar and the feature version of the unmade, never to be made feature version of Axanar. I'm hoping to be working with him again shortly on Tango Shalom. I work with him on Paradox. One of the great things about working on movies is you meet these great people, and if they know what they're doing, you continue to work with them. Like Tobias Richter from Axanar, he did visual effects for Tango Shalom, and he did the visual effects for Skyfighter. I'm hoping that Alex Bornstein, who I met working on Axanar and the unmade Axanar feature, and then I work with him on Paradox. I hope to be working with him again on another project. That's part of the fun of making movies. But sorry, Dieter, I didn't mean to oh, Dieter. Okay, Dieter's asking me, greetings from Germany, and hey, Rob, as a filmmaker, have you seen the Japanese movie One Cut of the Dead? Blu-ray is out in the UK. No spoilers. Best watch cold. Okay, Dieter, dude, you and I park our shuttlecrafts inside the same shuttle bay, or we send our shuttlecrafts out to blow up the nucleus of a giant 11,000 of the same 11,000 mile long space meteor. Dieter is referring to no spoilers, watch cold. I agree with Dieter. If you guys like zombie movies, if you like horror films, now I have not seen One Cut of the Dead, but unfortunately, as I'm wont to do, I know all about it. I can't wait to see it. It's a zombie movie that has a very, if you guys have seen Charlie Brooker's series Black Mirror, if you're a Black Mirror fan and you like Charlie Brooker, the creator of Black Mirror, he created a TV series that's on Netflix, a UK series called Dead Set, which I've talked about it before. But Dead Set is a very meta show about the Big Brother house in the UK. And if you ever watched the UK version of Big Brother before it came here, there's even a lot of the actors that were, or the people that were on UK Big Brother in Dead Set. And it's basically about the team that's making Big Brother during the zombie apocalypse. And so there's people trapped in Big Brother house and they don't even know what's happened. Dead Set is great. One Cut of the Dead has elements of Dead Set in it. And I am dying to see this. I think I'm going to have to visit Amazon UK and hit a little click. I didn't realize One Cut of the Dead was out already. That's one of the things I like about Amazon UK and Amazon Japan and Amazon Germany. So Dieter, thank you for that. I didn't realize One Cut of the Dead was out in the UK. Richard Ford says, for your information, Katowski, another YouTube video channel guy who I also watch, Katowski's YouTube channel published a worth reading piece today with author Matthew Cottish, RE, the Star Trek 25% difference mess, how we got here. You know, Richard, I can't wait to go read that because that really interests me. And, you know, it's funny, on this chat, I just realized that I, too, have been laboring under the false impression that the opening of Star Trek 09 is canonical Trek, when I've just come to the realization it is not. It is not canonical Trek because we never see the future that the Narada came from. So none of Star Trek 09 is canonical. See, after all this time, I learned something new. I just talking to you guys, I've realized something new. I've got to go look into this. Maybe I'm going to do a whole segment on this. Celadon Sound says, is this toxicity new to the community, or has the internet simply shone a light on it? What changed? Excited for the last Starfighter debut. Well, if you're talking about Skyfighter is just my film. The Last Starfighter, is there going to be a new Last Starfighter? Because there should be. They can update Last Starfighter. You know, I have to say that here's the difference. When I used to go to science fiction conventions as a kid, they were predominantly literary conventions because it was all about science fiction books, because there wasn't that much media, and the availability, home video was new. Like, we're talking late 70s, early 80s when I was a youngling, and it was new. So we didn't have the kind of, you would get in knockdown, drag out fights, but there was, because it was literary, they were a little bit more erudite, and you had to. The big difference was, you know, you had to be standing in front of somebody and have a conversation. So one, you needed to be able to state your point with a certain amount of eloquency, and then you also needed to be able to relate to another human being. Because, you know, you went to conventions to find like-minded people, because there were no like-minded people in your everyday life. You know, you couldn't, like, my mother didn't want to listen to me go on and on and on and on and on about Star Trek. She just didn't. I told the story the other day when I was in second grade. My mom actually said to me, when I came home from school every day in second grade, I would start conveying everything that I learned that day in school over the dinner table as if it was brand new to everybody, not just new to me. And my mom at one point, she finally just forbade me to talk about school. They never asked me about school because it would be a 2-hour conversation about me just telling my parents and my sister what I had learned, and my mom couldn't deal. That's why when I was doing Indian guides with my dad, he gave me the Indian name Chief Running Mouth, which those of you watching here can attest to. I'm going to watch Kowalski. I will read that piece, Richard. Thanks for pointing that out. Jim Boyers is here. Officer Boyers, how are you? Know what I like about toxic fans? Their absence. See, I don't know. I don't understand where toxic fandom came from, because I always wanted to have friends. Like, I was a social kid. I grew up. I had girlfriends. I wrote for the school newspaper. I played sports, believe it or not, too. I played baseball and basketball. I skied, snow skied. I was always a really social kid, so I had lots of friends, but I didn't share my huge enthusiasm for science fiction, fantasy, and horror with those friends. I became a popular kid, and we were the first family that had a VCR, and I started showing my friends, when I was 13, R-rated movies. My mom would get the phone calls from, invariably, some girl would say, "Hi, Mom, I watched Animal House at Bob Burnett's house, and there are boobs in it." And, you know, my mom would get the phone call, "Your son showed my daughter a movie with boobs." my mom would come down and go, "What are you showing down here?" I'm like, "Well, Mom, we're showing Animal House." My mom didn't understand. She's like, "Well, what's wrong with that?" I go, "I don't know." "Well, these parents are calling. Maybe you shouldn't show girls movies with boobs in them." And I'm like, "Mom, there's 15 people here. It's not like, I'm having one girl over. I'm not like using a movie like this as a prelude for more hanky panky. There's 15 kids here watching Alien, watching our 5 R-rated movies I had, because back then you couldn't see that. You used to hear the conversations my mom had to endure when someone came home and said they saw The Exorcist at my house at 13. Not a happy fan. My mom was not a happy mom. Rolo Tomasi, great name, Rolo. Rolo Tomasi says, so many movies and especially TV shows like Married with Children that would never be made today thanks to progressive ideologies. When did liberals start supporting censorship or hate speech? Dude, I don't know, man. I do not know. It scares me to death. I used to think that people on my side of the aisle, I think of myself as a progressive democratic liberal. But man, the far left, people who want to censor speech. Some of my favorite movies, A Clockwork Orange. I'm waiting for the day when those movies are taken off the shelf and banned forever. One person, if I was going into a college film course and I wanted to teach a course on Stanley Kubrick, I would have to issue trigger warnings. I would have to say that, you know what? I'm not going to show Lolita. I'm not going to show A Clockwork Orange in film class unless everybody signs a waiver. So I'm not responsible. I mean, it's just crazy. We are a far less mature society, and I don't know why. Scott Dolson says, Rob, the problem is that people of this community don't really like people who really aren't in the community, disparaging them. Her comment might be for films in general, but the geeks are responding. It's true, but we, the geeks, were an oppressed minority, and now we live in the post-geek singularity community where all of our geeky interests are completely mainstream. The fact that an Avengers movie can gross $2 billion is proof of that. By the way, last night, I had an epic dream about Avengers Endgame, and it was totally convoluted, and I came out of the dream not understanding the movie. So I hope that's not the case. I hope that wasn't a premonition, but this is how obsessed I am with this movie. Chris Tugboat says, I own a few anamorphic lenses for my Canon, pun not intended. They're great for open air photography. I agree with that. Awesome. That's cool, Chris. Do you find, by the way, it's difficult? Do you have problems with lens flaring when you're out shooting natural light with the sun? Because I love Skyfighter. I love the sun flares that are all over the exterior footage in Skyfighter. Bunyan Snipe says, Alex Cox used to do wraparound segments for cult movies called Movie Drome on the BBC. They're really cool. Some of them are on YouTube. Yeah, Alex Cox made some pretty good movies. I was a huge fan of his. Robert April says, always remember the dune buggy scene in Nemesis was Patrick Stewart's idea. He does not have the best creative instincts. For those of you interested in a fascinating tale, go online and find Michael Pillar's book, his account. It's never been officially published. I think you can get it. His wife, his lovely widow, is selling the book. But he wrote a fascinating account of what it was like to write Star Trek Nemesis. Star Trek Nemesis. Star Trek Insurrection, and all the travails he went through, including dealing with Patrick Stewart's notes. If you want to see how ridiculous Hollywood can be, Michael Pillar's book, and Michael Pillar was a very nice man, but you can see it's pretty interesting to read that book. So check that book out. Go find it. It's worth reading. Josh Crichton says, Rob, check out the Pennywise action figure. It's awesome, and I should get it. Here's the thing. There's a lot of great Pennywise figures, especially NECA makes them. But, I am pretty much a Hot Toys only, but I'm 6 scale. I will diverge. I'll get Blitzway. I'll get a Blitzway figure or 3A. But I really am pretty much. Friends of mine say they have the Hot Toys Neo figure. I didn't pre-order that because I didn't have the cash. But man, I want that figure. It's awesome. It comes with lots of guns, just like in the movie. Guns. Fantastic. The King of Scotland says, talking about the time machine, anyone else find it creepy that in the 2002 version, Guy Pearce was 35 years old and his love interest, Samantha Mumbo, was only 18? Wow, I never thought about that. Yeah, this is why Brie Larson's talking the way she is, because they've had to put up with that that kind of representation in movies for their whole lives. Let's see. Go that way, 09. I like that. Go that way. You'll be what is it? You'll be malfunctioning within a day. You nearsighted scrap pile or something. Go that way says we need a Star Trek sitcom. Picard lives in an apartment in Milwaukee with Data and Worf, and their wacky next door neighbor gets them into all kinds of crazy, hilarious adventures. I like that. Bartamac is here from Ireland. Hello, Bartamac. I don't want any more TNG, TOS stories. Discovery is all about Spock, Pike, Sarek, Amanda, now Picard. Love Patrick Stewart, but surely it's someone at CSS has an original idea. You know what? I can't believe how much they're strip mining TOS. Now the Telosians are going to come in. I mean, like, come on, man. It's like what you. It just bums me out. It just bums me out. It really does. Bozo the Clown says, oh man, Bozo, I love you, man. Talking about Basic Instinct 3 with Michael Douglas returning as retired shooter Nick Curran, Catherine Trammell missing, new younger ice blonde killer on the loose, Margot Robbie. Dude, instead of having Basic Instinct 3, let's just do a Basic Instinct reboot with Margot Robbie. You know, I'm a Basic Instinct 2 apologist. Risk Addiction. It was written by Henry Bean, who wrote Internal Affairs. Internal Affairs. If you guys want to see a great movie, watch Richard Gere, Andy Garcia, Laurie Metcalf in Internal Affairs, 1990. Man, it's good. Go watch it. But I'm a huge Basic Instinct fanatic. I heard some news about a Basic Instinct 4K that I'm not sure if I can share, but there's a 4K coming out. So if I wasn't supposed to say anything, Studio Canal is doing a 4K of Basic Instinct. Man, I cannot wait. Awesome. Bartamac also says Star Destroyer is a space version of a World War II battleship. Enterprise is far ahead of it technologically. There's an episode of TNG when they find it funny. Someone shoots blasters at them, and blasters are Star Wars. It's true. Crixus Maximus says, actually, in the U.S. Congress pre-Civil War, a Southern congressman beat the crap out of a Northern anti-slavery congressman. Well, that should happen now. And I would be down for that. Nihilist Shadow says, I love John Carter. I never heard of the series until the movie. I only knew Edgar Rice Burroughs through Tarzan, and after seeing the movie, I bought the books and loved them too. Nihilist Shadow is correct. I mean, for those who are interested, Edgar Rice Burroughs, who created Tarzan, also created the Barsoom books. Barsoom is the name of Mars. The indigenous population of Mars calls Mars Barsoom because why would they call it Mars? They don't know anything about the mythology that the god of war Mars is based on or whatever, which is, I mean, even Edgar Rice Burroughs understood that Barsoom, you know, the indigenous people of a planet call it something different. I love that. So, you know, that's fantastic. Oh, here's somebody I haven't seen. Wait, I just saw someone's name that, I skipped it. I'm sorry, I missed your. Oh, Elko DeBoer says, enjoy Stubble McShave. I'm sorry, I didn't see. Oh, 666 says, oh my God, white men are being oppressed. I know, dude. I know. It's all silly. It's all silly. However, just because white men have been, look, every society has oppressed some other society. But I don't think you can trade, again, one oppression for another. It does not make any sense to me. Let's see. I hope I'm answering. Gosh, I'm looking down here. There's so many questions. I'm going back up. And Fergal Kelly says, hey, Rob, have you uploaded the official second episode of Robservations yet, or did I miss it? Okay. For those of you, I've actually done, I wasn't even going to do these live chats. I was going to do these episodes of Robservations, which are going to be me traveling around. And I've done one. I've done one called Middle-Aged Cosplay, where I go to Olympia, Washington, and I interview Greg Smith about building a full-scale 1-to-1 land speeder and joining the 501st Vader's Fist and joining that Legion, the 501st Legion, as a middle-aged man. So check that out. No, my second episode of Robservations, which, by the way, I will be dropping probably this week. I know I keep saying that, is with author Diane Duane. I interviewed her from a pub in Ireland via Skype. It's, again, not technically very savvy, but it's really interesting. Mark C says, I think Hollywood is an echo chamber of crazy people. You know, Mark, I have to say that's not been my experience. We get this bad rap, but the people that I know, actually, the nose to the grindstone people that are making stuff. One of the great things about working in Hollywood is if you're actually working, like say you're working on a film set, there's a wide variety of people. All walks of life are represented on a Hollywood film set. They really are. And there's very diverse points of view from everyone. And it's a lot of fun. So I recommend it. Celadon Sound says, in the early days of the internet, I found refuge and like-minded people on X-Files message boards. Now we have gatekeepers. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. When I first moved to Los Angeles, my first college roommate, John Parkan, he set up a BBS board because he was really into computers. On our dining room table, he basically set up it was a screen with a keyboard. It was like, a TSR 80 or something. And he had a BBS board where up to 20 people could log in if they found the number. And we had a Star Wars BBS. And I would sit up at nights and chat with random strangers. It was my first experience with the internet. And this was in the late 80s. And I would talk to people. It was crazy. It was absolutely insane. And I had this BBS board and everybody was nice. We're all really excited and sharing our knowledge. There was no acrimony. We were just happy to have a forum to talk about warp drive. And now what's really interesting is there was a lot of critical acumen brought to bear. I mean, we complain but it was always done with the understanding that we're all coming from a place of, look, I hate Star Trek Discovery. I'll flat out admit it. It's not that it's not a beautifully produced show. It's got competent actors. It's got great special effects. But I think it's bad Star Trek. It is. I think so. Other people like Star Trek Discovery, but other people aren't also steeped in 50 years of Star Trek lore or made a movie with their Star Trek idol, William Shatner. So Star Trek is more, I would say, I have a different, I come from Star Trek and the entire franchise from a different position. I've never actually created original Star Trek, but I've worked on Star Trek things professionally, including the Star Trek Experience in Vegas and creating 3 years of Star Trek The Next Generation documentaries released by CBS. So, and trying to make a Star Trek fan film. So, but I don't begrudge people that love Discovery. But what's really interesting now is if you say that you don't like something, the immediate response is, fuck you, I love Star Trek Discovery. It's not like, really? You don't like Star Trek Discovery? How come? I'd love to know why you don't like it. And I used to come from a place, I think I grew up coming from a place where people are like, well, why don't you like these things? And you'd have these long conversations with people about it. And they would tell you why they did like it. And you're like, I was not trying to convince anybody. We were just having a conversation. And I'd be like, that's interesting. And that's what made going to conventions fun. You'd see cool people and you'd meet them and you'd have these long rollicking conversations about, I don't know, The Prisoner. Patrick McGowan's The Prisoner. People were like, I hated those last 2 episodes. Fallout sucked. And I'd be like, I kind of liked them. And then you talk about it, but you'd still be smiling and grab a beer at the end of the day because you guys were there and you're celebrating. What we were celebrating was all of geek culture. And having debates was what made it fun. Now having debates, you want to shoot somebody in the face with a phaser pistol. Not a real gun. I don't want to advocate that. Nor do I. If I had a real phaser pistol, I have a fake phaser pistol up there. But I don't understand that. Like, debating people is no longer fun. Like, I dearly love the X-Files. I hated seasons 10 and 11 of the X-Files. I really tuned out. I mean, after the 4th season, the problem with the X-Files was the actual creators didn't know that it was like they were playing Twister with themselves. They tied themselves up with their own mythology and they couldn't untwist. And they didn't know, none of it made any sense. And then they made this movie that made no sense. And it was very frustrating. So yes, I completely understand. So I'm going to upload. Celadon Sound says tribalism has taken hold. Yes, I think it has. Mech Random 42 is here. Mech, we're talking Mech, who I just met, by the way. I was just did a podcast. You were delightful. I really enjoyed being on a podcast with you. She says, I wish they would just tell me it's cool if you don't like it without being called names. That's my biggest problem with modern Trek fandom. They're in a nutshell. They're in a nutshell. Uh, I used to love having conversations with Star Trek fans. Now it's like I love when people come onto my Facebook or my Twitter feed and tell me I'm an old man. I don't get it. I'm like, I could out talk Star Trek with you people forever. But it's funny that you come and you want to be like, well, you don't understand, blah, 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 blah. No, I would say that if I got a PhD in anything, my friend Tom Parham, Professor Tom Parham, he did his PhD thesis on Star Trek. He has a book coming out called Communication in Star Trek. He teaches at Azusa Pacific University. He's a great guy. He cosplays, I mean, I could probably do that too. I just wouldn't, I'd rather build a Starship model than write a book. John Sutries is here. John, who I've been on his podcast, he's the best. R.E. the Prisoner. Have you seen In My Mind, a prisoner documentary that has never before seen McGowan interview footage? I saw it on Amazon Prime. There is a prisoner documentary on Amazon Prime. Well, I know what I'm doing for the rest of the afternoon. Wow, dude, I didn't even know that. John's great, by the way. You have to seek out his podcast. It's awesome. Stress-Free K. Nyla's Shadow, the change is the makeup of the cast. Before it was Uhura, now it's Burnham and Stamets, Culber. I don't have a problem with inclusion. I don't have a problem with gay characters. I don't have a problem with a black character. We've had black characters in Star Trek. I don't have a problem with alien characters. I don't. But what I do have a problem with is this idea that I don't think inclusion is best served when it's at the forefront of these things. What you want to make these things par for the course. Being smart on a starship and being able to do your job should not be what an episode is about. I just assume people should be good at their jobs. So then you're free to tell a story that's more interesting than watching people do their jobs well. And when somebody is a gay character, I think a gay relationship would be much better served just showing a same-sex relationship in a loving, functional way. The same way that you watch Deep Space Nine, it has one of the greatest portrayals of a single black father and his son ever on television. But on Deep Space Nine, they never went, look, today's episode is about the single black father and his relationship with his son. What made it so great was it was all presented as a matter-of-fact thing. And that's far more powerful when people are seeing these things and they're not beat over the head. Because, look, the reason they told the stories they told in The Twilight Zone and the reason they told the stories they told in the original Star Trek is they were being told at a time when network standards and practices would never have let them get away with issue-oriented shows. But because they were in the context of a science fiction action adventure or a speculative fiction show like The Twilight Zone, they could deal head on with issues like the Vietnam War. And people who saw them were more apt to accept what the episodes were saying because they're in the context of a science fiction action adventure show. But when you make your political issues should come out of the story. They should be derived from, that's what great storytelling is. The worst episodes of Star Trek were those episodes that beat you over the head, like the Omega Glory or like Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. Those episodes don't work because we don't need to be preached to. I mean, what's great about Star Trek and The Twilight Zone, and indeed a lot of science fiction, is all of the issues that are inherent in the storytelling, they sneak up on you. And those people that might be triggered by such issues, that might be on the other side of the aisle from where those issues are coming from, it's better if these shows can sneak up. I am shocked by how many people I've met that that are on the other side of the aisle. I'm always surprised that they love Star Trek as much as they do, because I'm like, oh, you like Star Trek because of the surface. You're not seeing the underlying message, but that's okay. That's okay. I just think that if you make your agenda this inclusion, this period of time that we're going through in our culture where everybody has to be woke and you all have to play your identity politics, you are undercutting the very stories that you're telling. And that's what I think is unfortunate. That's what I think is sad about Star Trek. Darren Doctorman is here. Darren Doctorman says it could be argued that since the people making Discovery are not steeped in the Star Trek culture of the last 50 years, that they don't come from that, that Discovery is actually an example of cultural appropriation. Oh, I agree. I agree with Darren 100%. I think Discovery is Star Trek cultural appropriation of the worst kind. It's appropriation of Star Trek with a cursory understanding of what made it Star Trek. And I think the fact that they're just going through and picking all of this canonical. Look, the problem that I have as an old school Star Trek fan is I've already read Star Trek novels that have been people like Peter David, people like Diane Duane, people like the Reeve Stevens, people like Christopher Bennett, people like David Mack. They do a wonderful job within the context of their novels of going into Star Trek canon and expanding and extrapolating upon that canon where it feels plausible. A lot of their novels I consider to be canonical. And that's because they spent a whole heck of a lot of time imagining the realities of this world and what the universe of Star Trek would be like. And that's why their books are such a joy to read. If you go read David Mack's Mirror Universe duology, there is more rich world building in those two novels than in that what they've done with the Mirror Universe and Star Trek Discovery. In my mind, they've ruined these concepts are being ruined. You can like the show, but the universe is being really, really damaged. It would be like somebody coming along and if they did the same thing to the Lord of the Rings universe, especially with all the appendices and the Silmarillion and the different books that have come out dealing with that. You can't go in and make a Lord of the Rings television series without a real understanding of Tolkien, because you'll never come out ahead. And now there'll be those of you who go, well, how come Tom Bombadil wasn't in the Lord of the Rings movies? Look, man, I get it. A lot of the songs and the poems and everything that was sung, and those aren't in the movie either, because you can't. That's what adaptation is. But the spirit of the Lord of the Rings books are definitely in those movies. And even though Gimli said things that Legolas was supposed to say, I get it. But there's adaptation there. What Discovery wants to do is a wholesale reimagining and retconning of all of Star Trek, which to my mind, what it says to me is that they think that they're smarter and better than all of the hundreds of people that came before them. And there's no respect for all the work that was done for 40 years. And as a fan, as somebody who's followed this for so long, I find it frustrating that every episode of Star Trek Discovery, they just willy-nilly pick things out and go, yeah, man, let's go to Talos 4. Well, they've done all of these things in other Star Trek media, whether it's Star Trek Online, whether it's the comics, whether it's the books. And all of these stories that they've told on Discovery, there have been a lot of Mirror Universe stories before. And most of the Mirror Universe stories in other Star Trek mediums have been better than what the writers from Discovery have given us. That's what bothers me, is that I've read great Mirror Universe Star Trek stories, including David Mack's novel. But going all the way back to the first DC Comics run, they did like a 10-issue arc in the Mirror Universe that was actually way more entertaining. I mean, they could never have done it on Discovery because it was dealing with the original series. But it was more entertaining and made more sense than the entire first season of Discovery, which Discovery was itself a bastardization of the 13-episode outline that was created by the original showrunner, Brian Fuller. So there's a lot of reasons to hate that show. But I don't begrudge anyone whose first experience is Discovery, or even good friends of mine that I really respect and love dearly. They like Star Trek Discovery as much as they like Star Trek 09. They're still my friends, although they're skating on thin ice. I'm talking about you, Jeff Bond. Let's see. Let me go up and find some more questions. Man, this is a long one. Crixus Maximus says, Richard Ford, bro, I was thinking the same thing when the tentacles popped out of the probe. I don't know. Are you talking about? I don't know. You know what? It's a bummer when I read it. I'm going back and Richard Ford says, dude, they were strip mining the Matrix last week with the probe turning into an attacking robot. Why would they violate the Telosians? Nothing is sacred. Yeah, I don't know. The funny thing about the Telosians is the only time the idea that Pike went to Talos 4, or that anybody, on Star Trek Discovery, that anybody would have visited Talos 4 before the menagerie just pisses me off to no end, because it invalidates. Then you can't go back and watch the menagerie and have it mean the same thing. You'd be going, wait a minute, but if they just came out and they said that Star Trek '09, the Kelvinverse movies, and now that I've had this realization that all of Star Trek '09 is not Star Trek canon. On this conversation, I'm convinced of this. If they just came out and said it, this is an extension of the Kelvinverse, fine. It's fine. But I would still think, are you so creatively bankrupt that you can't go create your own aliens? I mean, the mandate on Star Trek The Next Generation was they waited 3 years to, sure, they had Admiral McCoy, but they never called him by name. And they waited 3 years to bring Sarek on, and it was played by the same actor. So anyway, yeah. Bunyan Snipe says, my friend had a bit part in Basic Instinct too. Yeah, that's cool. Hassan Chavez says, everybody's crazy in Hollywood. I'm surprised they want to be perfect examples of morality today. I wouldn't say, I think that it's a cliche that everybody is crazy in Hollywood. I've met some of my favorite people in the world in Hollywood, Darren Doctorman being one of them. I mean, one of the great things is when you can, Darren Doctorman, who's now working on the Westwood TV series. I've known Darren. I met Darren because of Talk Trek. I met Darren because we talked Star Trek and we became friends. We've been friends for almost 25 years now. And I'd never worked with Darren. Well, that's not true. He was in Free Enterprise, but I never worked with him as a creative individual. Well, he was creative in Free Enterprise too, because he ad-libbed his lines. So I should say I've never actually worked on a project where we were two creative entities working on a movie, and I had a joyful experience working with Darren on Tango Shalom. He did some visual effects. He did a lot of TV burn-ins. He did a lot of wire removal. And it was just a wonderful experience working with Darren. He worked quickly. He took notes and did a wonderful job. And that's what I love about working in Hollywood. And I got him paid quickly too, which is I've said this on the show before. One of the great lessons in Hollywood is it's not show friends, it's show business. And you don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. And my third is fast pay makes fast friends. So live by those three rules. Let's see. Matthew Gaudette said Lucas had already used Burroughs, and so had James Cameron. The film was 100 years after the novel. Yeah, it's funny because so much of A Princess of Mars, which later became John Carter, is part of the pop culture zeitgeist, and everybody strip mined Burroughs. Everybody strip mine the Barsoom novels. Scott Dolson says Basic Instinct holds the record for the most paused moment ever. I wonder what that moment was. I don't know. Wow. Celadon Sound says, my dad calls film a distraction from the real world. I studied astrophysics and I'm a programmer entrepreneur by trade, but it takes an incredible emotional intelligence to understand the human condition. I'm in awe of actors, directors, and writers who tell beautiful stories. You know what, dude? That's I agree with that, because throughout human history, storytellers have always been important. I mean, look at the poetics and look at the Greeks basically created drama. I'm sure people have been telling stories since, if you read the book Sapiens 100,000 years ago. They were probably telling stories to each other, finger painting on walls. And I understand. I think parents that grew up in a different generation, they want their children to be more prosperous than they are. And they see, like, when you're sitting down watching a movie or specifically playing video games, dude, when Uncharted came out, it was the first and only video game in my life I sat down and played from beginning to end. Uncharted 1 in one sitting. I only got it for pee breaks, beer, and some food. I played the game from beginning to end. Now, from the outside, if my dad, who'd already passed away by this time, if he had saw me sitting down for 13 hours or 14 hours and playing a video game, he would have questioned whether that was really the best thing for my life, to be playing a video game. My answer would be that playing such a video game is you're engaging your imagination, because I'm convinced when people get really into video games, it becomes experiential. When you're playing an MMORPG, or you're playing Call of Duty, or you're playing Grand Theft Auto, or you're playing even Ico, I loved Ico. these become experiential games for your imagination as people, because you're using your imagination to drop yourself into those scenarios, and that's why they're so attractive. That's why people play World of Warcraft, because it's I don't think it's an escape from the real world so much as you're exercising an imaginative part of your brain, because you need to you have to buy into that. You have to buy into playing a video game and having it mean anything to you. You have to engage parts of your mind to get in on that, and that can become inspirational too. You never know what kind of ideas you play. A good round of, like, look, Leroy Jenkins. I'm sure everybody knows what it means when you say Leroy Jenkins. I mean, even to this day, I just think, you know what? When I go into a meeting, a Hollywood meeting that I don't know what the hell is going to happen, or I go into a situation that might be a little bit beyond my capabilities, or something that I might not be able to do, if I know that I'm putting myself in harm's way professionally or personally, or I'm just in a little over my head, I hear in the back of my mind somebody screams Leroy Jenkins, and I just soldier on. So I don't think that film, novels, books, whatever it is you love, video games, building model kits, it all serves to further whatever it is your goals are in the real world. They shouldn't supplant making a living, but or being the best person you can be. If you get too caught up in that stuff, you have to have balance. But like, your dad said that film is a distraction, but I don't think you studied astrophysics and became a programmer or entrepreneur without the stuff that you love, your geeky interests. Because what is being an entrepreneur, creating a business? Being an entrepreneur is like being a filmmaker. You dream something, that you conjure up something that doesn't exist. Being an entrepreneur means you dream a project or a company into existence from nothing. What is that if not magic in a certain way? So good on you. Jim Boyer says actors are crazy. The rest of the crew are normal. Well, that's true, Jim. That is absolutely true. I think that's true. Keldon, Dieter Bastian is back. Hey, Rob, don't forget to order your copy of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 3D on Blu-ray. If you're ordering one cut of the dead, physical media until the end. Yeah, I agree with you, dude. I will be buying those 3D. I only have one pair of 3D glasses, which is a bummer. I got to get another pair. But the ones I need for my Panasonic, I love my Panasonic TV, but the glasses are hard to come by. They're like $125 for the pair that I need, and I need a second pair. Yes, I will do that. Captain Robert April says, have just been told the Star Trek Continue sets are having another fan appreciation weekend in April. Interested? Yeah, you know who might be interested in that? The Star Trek Continue sets are having another fan appreciation weekend in April. Christian Gossett and I both might be interested in that. Can't say why we might, but we might be. Scott Dolson says, I agree. Star Trek Discovery might not be a bad show, but it is a bad Star Trek show. I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. Bartomac from Ireland says, Lucas also borrowed from Green Lantern to the New Gods. Rebel pilot Hal Hahn with his giant hairy friend. Father figure turns bad. Guardian Yoda, both a little elf-like creatures, teaching you how to wield a weapon. Totally agree. Look, everybody's borrowing from everybody else. Star Wars is an amalgamation of samurai movies, DC Comics, Edgar Rice Burroughs, all of it mixed into a frothy mix. I like that. Matthew Gaudette says, the internet brought out a lot of opinions people never would have known about with regards to Star Wars, Star Trek, and comic book films. I agree with that too, 100%. You have to take the good with the bad. The fact that we can all interconnect with one another, the fact that we are all interconnected, the fact that I can talk to you. There's people here from all over the planet Earth right now on this chat, and I don't pay anything to log on. I mean, I have to have the equipment to do so. And you guys, thank you for your support. I really appreciate the support, but you guys are being here. This is an amazing thing. And why we use this communications technology to scream and yell at one another, it's because people are anonymous. If you have to talk to people face to face, it's a whole different thing. And now we have more bandwidth than ever. And what I want to start doing is, a lot of you people that are here a lot, we should do a Google Hangouts one day. I would love to do a live Robservations Google Hangouts with some of you who are here the most and who send me a lot of these super chat questions. We should sit down and do sort of a neighborhood meeting, sort of a Robservations block party where we all can chime in and we can see one another and have a conversation from all over the world. I think that would be really, really cool. That would be a lot of fun and I think worth doing. Timbula the Spider Monkey. How you doing, Timbula? Thank you. Hey, Rob, you missed my super chat. What did you think of the BBC version of The Tripods? Also, box set of all the Psycho movies? I'm in. For those who don't know, 3 of my favorite books of all time, which I read when I was 10 years old and I was in the 4th grade, I called them My Harry Potter, are The Tripods. It's the Tripods trilogy by John Christopher. The books are The White Mountains, The City of Golden Lead, and The Pool of Fire. The White Mountains is the first, City of Golden Lead is the second. And basically, it's about a group of young boys in a conquered Earth. Earth has been conquered by aliens, and the human population has been subjugated by these aliens. And unbeknownst to the human population, the aliens are getting ready to terraform the planet and make it toxic for all human life. And there was also a 4th book written I think it's called Before the Tripods, which I've never seen. And the BBC made a miniseries in the early 80s about the Tripods. I like it, but it's hampered by budget constraints. Disney has owned these books for decades, and nothing has ever been made of them. So Mike Bodden says, Leroy Jenkins. Yes, indeed. You guys all should look up. If you guys don't know everyone knows who Leroy Jenkins is, but Leroy Jenkins, it's a World of Warcraft thing, is the funniest shit ever. It never ceases to make me laugh because it's just so hilarious. Val Holocron sends me a heart. Thank you, Val Holocron. Are you a Jedi Holocron? Are you the Jedi Holocron? Stephanie Littlepage says, Rob, you sound like me when I watched Independence Day for the first time in the theater. I didn't move for that entire 2+ hours. People bag on Independence Day. I love Independence Day. Independence Day is like the greatest movie about giant flying saucers coming to Earth and blowing shit up. Sure, and it's a complete throwback to 70s disaster movies, but it knows what it is. Independence Day is not. It's not telling you it's something that it's not. This is why I like Armageddon. People are like, oh, Armageddon's a guilty pleasure. No, it's not. If I want to be moved by that same story, I'll watch a little Deep Impact. I like my Tia Leone and Maximilian Schell and Morgan Freeman as the president and Elijah Wood and Denise Crosby. I love me some Deep Impact. Jon Favreau. I mean, come on. Deep Impact is great. Robert Duvall. But then I like my little, Armageddon is the rock and roll version of Deep Impact. And Deep Impact is kind of like, I don't know, the Tori Amos version. Maybe not. But yeah, so there's nothing wrong with liking those things. Stub McShave says, in science fiction fantasy, issues may be addressed without baggage. I totally agree. Totally agree. Mark C says, but Robert, nobody likes Star Trek, so they're making Star Trek for those people. But here's the thing. In the post-geek singularity, there's more people now in the world that would love Star Trek. Look what happened with, I point to, and this is going to open up a kettle of fish, but Doctor Who. Doctor Who was this cult show. Even when my friend Eric Wallace, he'd be like, dude, we got to watch some Doctor Who. We'll get together and watch some Tom Baker. And we went back and Sylvester McCoy and Pete Davidson. And it's all, and I would watch Doctor Who with him and John Colbrenner. I'd be like, this is cool. I like Doctor Who. I like Blake Seven more. But talk about a niche market. And then Eccleston comes back in 2005. They revitalized Doctor Who. And there's an entire group of fans, a giant new worldwide fan base that is discovering Doctor Who for the first time because the Eccleston season and Russell T Davies came aboard and turned the whole planet, well, not the whole planet, but these people here, the members of the post-geek singularity community, you guys became lovers of Doctor Who. There's a whole audience of people out there, and I would argue that a lot of people are discovering Star Trek, and it's their first Star Trek. And that's great. I just want it to be better. I want it to be better and not as nonsensical and not strip mining Star Trek willy-nilly and haphazardly and telling stories that aren't so good. That's all I care about. I want good stories. Mark C says, have you ever read the graphic novel The Inkle by Jodorowsky and Mobius? Yes, sir. I have it right there in the garage. I think Epic Comics put it out. That's the version I have. I love that. It's crazy. But Timula the Spider Monkey, did I miss your super chat today? I hope I didn't. Somebody asked me that before once, and I apologize for that. Matthew Goddard says, I love Capaldi. So disappointed when he left. You know, and then all these people are arguing which Doctor is their favorite. First of all, one of the greatest, if you guys haven't seen Torchwood, Children of Earth, I'd never seen Torchwood. I'd seen Captain Jack. I have a huge man crush on Captain Jack. He can do no wrong. But I had never seen Torchwood, an episode of Torchwood, and I was told to watch Children of Earth, which is the third Torchwood series. It's only 5 episodes. It's 5 of the finest hours of televised science fiction I've seen in a long time. And John Barrowman has never been better. The threat is incredible. The story is dark. The storytelling is amazing. And even if you've never watched Torchwood before, or even if you don't even know who Captain Jack is, and you don't know what Torchwood is, watch Children of Earth. Emmett Beach says, what do you think of new Doctor Who? Honoring the tradition are too different. If you're talking about the Jodie Whittaker Doctor Who, I haven't really seen the Jodie Whittaker Doctor Who. I only saw one episode and then part of one where she goes to Space Amazon and gets the Fez. You know, I saw part of that. But I think, you know, Doctor Who is interesting. It's changing with the times. Again, I've read a lot and watched a lot of YouTube videos about people that are upset about the progressive agenda that's being put forward in Doctor Who. And again, I find that permeating a lot of what we see today. I just think that you can have your progressive agenda and you can preach tolerance and you can preach inclusion, but do it in a clever way where it's wrapped up in the story. You know, don't beat me over the head. Don't beat other people over the head. I think the best Star Trek, the best Twilight Zone, the best indeed science fiction. I mean, Dune is a great book that deals, if you read Dune now, it applies to our modern. You're going to recognize a lot of things if you've never read Dune. But it's not going to drive you. It's not triggering. It's not going to make you angry. It'll make you think, like the best science fiction. Somebody from the hashtag show is here. By the way, I was talking about your story in the Picard series characters. I was taking it all in. And by the way, nice reporting. I don't know where you got your stuff. I didn't read the article on your actual channel. But see, okay, this is what I'm talking about. I start talking about the hashtag show almost 2 hours ago because I read it on Dark Horizons on Garth's site, which is based out of Australia. Read it on the hashtag show. I start talking about it. You guys come here, and now someone from the hashtag show is in my stream, and we're all talking about it. How great is the world that we live in? This is what I'm talking about, people. This is why the post-geek singularity community is such a great one, and this is why I like having you guys here. That's why I'm doing these chats, because it's amazing that you people would even be here, and I can keep these stories or these conversations going. Mark C says, Christian Gossett worked with my cousin on the original Tales of the Jedi comic. My cousin was the inker. Okay, I didn't know that, Mark C. For those of you who don't know, Christian Gossett was the director of Prelude to Axanar, a movie that I edited that started off a through the looking glass situation that, in my mind, and it's still going on even today for me. Christian, famously, he was working on the Tales of the Jedi comic for Dark Horse. He created the double-bladed lightsaber that was popularized by Darth Maul. And he's been a friend of mine for 20 years, and he's always on Starship SmackDown. He's one of the funniest people I know. He's a great guy. And the reason I went to work on Prelude to Axanar, and indeed the Axanar project in general, was because of Christian Gossett. He's a great guy. I spoke to him just today. And yeah, so he's cool. I didn't know that your cousin worked with him. Celadon Sound says, one of my favorite sci-fi films is La Jetée. I love 12 Monkeys too. Did you enjoy these? Chris Marker directed La Jetée, and La Jetée is, it's a great film. And I think It's on a Criterion disc. La Jetée is actually a series of still images. It's an incredible science fiction film. It's a short. I highly recommend it. I love it. You should see it. It's great. Clayton George says, I'm a huge Torchwood fan, maybe even bigger than New Who. I wanted to see Torchwood and Unit knock heads, or have Torchwood get to use the Valiant helicarrier. Stress-free case says, oh, come on. The best TOS was the half black and half white guys. Let that be your last battlefield. If that's not in your face, beating you over the head, I don't know what is. Yes, but that episode is not good. I mean, it's got some interesting stuff in it, but talk about an episode that, no, not a good episode of Star Trek. So anyway, guys, girls, gentle beings, people of all shapes, sizes, colors, creeds. Gilbert, how you doing, buddy? Gilbert, come here. You want to come up here? Want to come say goodbye? Okay. Maybe you don't. Thanks for being here for this chat. I will be back tomorrow. And this has been a great conversation. Thanks for making it so much fun. I will see you guys soon. Tomorrow, probably around noonish, as I want to do. And then I'm back on the John Campea show Monday, 9 a.m. Thanks very much. And I will be talking to you. And as always, I forgot to use my sign off. Everyone you know has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And as always, have a better day. Thanks for being here.